a very product mindset, you talk with a lot of the PhDs, and then you implement what they do.
You eat their papers and fries. That's.
They're just doing the academia.
This talk's gonna be trivial to you because this is like how you act already. But I think the energy it brings.
What is the talk launching?
Whole goal
It's like how do you deploy AI things very quickly?
So the thing is like, okay, if you haven't built an AI product, like a consumer-facing product using ML, how do you do it in like an hour, not months? Because there's so many sinkholes where, so previous Pivot and Banana, we worked with like more than 50 companies, and we saw like the main sinkholes. And so we're like, okay, how do you get new devs out of that? Like, I'd love to save this room like multiple years of dev time.
Kyle, I think when you can get your product in front of so many people, the main thing is like, I know a lot of people, I'm like friends with tons of people who write educational blog posts, and I personally like have educational blog posts on the internet or videos. I have like videos on the internet about like, I don't know, when's that? It's like, so I know kind of like the process of, this is like for calculus, but it's like, I know you can be huge and own one of the domains. In my case, anyone who's studying for calculus knows me of the next generation. But I want everyone who's trying to boot up Stable Diffusion to know Kyle Marks. Does that make sense?
I think
it's like you have this unique opportunity that day by day, like it's gonna be much harder. It's gonna be huge, but you need to like go now. So it's like revamp all the thing, and then I'll highly recommend the whole weekend to produce video. You need a camera, or if you want to come to Neo to shoot it, you come, I can give you a mic, I can give you a camera, and shoot it. A nice setup. Boom. Like literally come to Neo like tomorrow or the day after, and we'll produce it. I'll teach you how to video edit. You get it out there, and hopefully it gets a lot of hits. Like 20,000 hits. How much money? Because a bunch of them are tiny.
So is the goal of product launch?
Yeah, it's product launching, but also like you need to nail like being Stable Diffusion tutorial. It's Commerce.
You got your shit.
Right? Like,
dude, you have like Mr. Beast vibes whenever I see you, like you got that. You got your SEO down.
I mean, I don't really know SEO, I just have a lot of things. I consume these things. And I also made
Absolutely. It would be cool to see
it's actually either tomorrow or the day after. I'll be up here probably the whole weekend.
We're gonna play by Sunday. I know it's not nice, but it's come forward.
Sunday or Monday, you can always come for work. And then, Sunday, No, I'm not. Everything's like I always have like almost like a stack of things I want to learn. So one on this, never consistent. But I usually like learn with like high amounts of intensity. I'll learn it myself, and I get someone very credible to teach me, and I just rapidly ask them questions. So, I don't know. In this case, it's math. How much math can I learn? That's pragmatic in an afternoon with someone who knows their math. I just ask them, like, teach me this, teach me linear algebra, like, teach me that.
I do the same thing with calculus. I went to like sales and math or just by what is the fundamental theorem?
Who did you ask?
Pardon?
Who did you ask?
I went to school.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's the best way to learn.
Like, okay, what are the three things? Like, derivative, fundamental theorem, like area under curve.
Because they've already processed it. Now you have to.
Yeah, and I'm like, can you pitch it?
There you go. Let's go.
Get it, you know. Hey. What's your name?
Brad?
Yeah, Brad.
Cool, Kyle.
Kyle, nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
What is your
I'm giving a talk. I run Banana, so I do machine learning infrastructure. When we start in like 15 minutes. 50? Yeah. 15. I'm doing building like serverless GPU infrastructure. Okay. So basically, we can launch AI applications and not pay out the app, like for only. So that's the like land. Are you in like the dev ecosystem with like AWS Lambda?
I was. In my first business, we built AWS infrastructure for DoD. So like we use like SageMaker and everything.
Ah, cool. Yeah.
There was one. Actually, I was going to say there was one experience that we had where their internal team had set up a machine learning algorithm to basically do predictive maintenance on the Air Force fleet, so on their like hardware components. But they used lambda functions to compute each one, which is really bad because they use the maximum amount of memory, which I think is like 3008 or something. So their monthly bill was like 87 grand to run these functions. Yeah. Obviously a bad decision, but nonetheless, like you do still want serverless, but not through Lambda.
Yeah.
So it's like you want max memory, but also
That's, we're basically trying to do that for large transformer models. The technical problem we're having is called fast routing.
how do you guys do it?
We run Spark. Like we effectively built out a product that AWS hasn't offered yet. So our goal is to use that to grow and then build out kind of preferred cloud ecosystem before big cloud launches. The equivalent of
What's your distribution strategy?
bottom up with devs to like penetrate early stage devs of people that haven't launched something yet, build on Banana, scale up. So in previous phases we saw teams take millions ARR go from 0 up to millions on Banana. So we're like, okay, let's get more of that. The next Google, they're on Banana, that's pretty solid. Not as concerned with like penetrating bigger existing companies, but I imagine that this is probably a playbook that'll form of like moving up market once we have, like if you talk to Google and your whole team uses Banana to track projects, and you go talk to them and say, hey, use this company.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Are you Eric?
I'm Kyle Morris. So I'm one of the founders of Banana. Eric Duncan is the other.
Oh, Eric here.
He's in Mexico right now. That's coming up right now. Yeah. What's your name?
Kevin Vergona.
Pleasure.
Kevin, I'm Brad. Brad. Nice to meet you.
Brad.
Yeah.
Are you also working?
No, I'm not. I came here for the talk.
Okay, cool.
We're just talking about what you're doing today.
Yeah, I'm an avid fan, so I would like to chat about it.
Yeah. Love it. Are you using it right now? Or are you?
Not currently.
What's your experience?
Well, I've been in the AI space for a while. Through a mix of consulting projects, computer vision projects, tools for the research community, and I'm a founder at an AI company. Our company is called Deep AI.
Oh, yeah. Wait, is deepai.org? Yep. You guys do the newsletter, auto-generated?
Yes.
I've been following that for years. That's where I get all my feeds. So this is the thing that sends out a weekly update, basically like almost like a Reddit iteration of like papers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
How many people have you met where they're like, yes, I know this project. I follow it. Like I get regular updates. I don't know the last time I actually got an update. You guys stopped sending me. We're also doing a some sort of what was the name of the project? It was like a classifier or some sort of like image pipeline thing.
Is it
Like,
Zendo?
Zendo, yeah,
You
Zendo
looked at
framework.
it. So
Yeah,
you're
I
already
already.
familiar with what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
It's
So, yeah, it happens.
It's
Something
yeah,
that
you can
I
explain it better
often.
than I would.
Sometimes I'll meet someone who's like calling one of our APIs. They're like, "What?"
Yeah, I know. It's super small world. So is it like I'm trying to, like, I remember Zendo because all the newsletters would have it. I'd be like, what is this?
I moved it to the bottom.
Got it.
Zendo is our end-to-end computer vision stack. And it's used in some enterprises. It runs on-prem for people with like security requirements. It also runs in the cloud if you want. You know, easy to use, users like it. It's pretty cool. But you know, I've historically over the years I've offered a la carte APIs for like 5 years now. Without putting much attention to it, but it actually sits there collecting money and making traffic. So I mean, I'm pondering doing something more with it at some point.
Do you know who currently uses it? Like, who is calling?
It's a mix of random businesses, like the a la carte APIs, random businesses, hobbyists, general computer people. All
You
over the
should
place.
consider, so a lot of defense companies cannot go on the cloud, even with GovCloud.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
My first business dealt with that,
Oh yeah.
and we couldn't, like some specific departments,
Yeah.
Lockheed and other providers,
Zero cloud.
they can't go on
Yeah,
cloud,
yeah, that's.
and that's who you
So
need
I'm
to reach out
adopting the Web Zero strategy.
Yeah. And then other
Web
things,
Zero AI.
yeah,
Absolutely.
great niche for you to play in. Biggest gross margins.
Yeah, I think what kind of contracts are you doing with DoD? Like, was this like? Yeah, I'm curious.
So you
Like,
got aerospace companies using it.
So we were a subprime contractor.
Oh, yeah.
So you have your prime contractors, but you can't start out as a prime contractor unless you're like sponsored by someone in the government. Obviously, I wasn't. I was a new college grad student, and so I was a subcontractor, a big prime contractor that was working on CBM Plus, which was like a massive overhaul of the Air Force's predictive maintenance software. So it's like, okay, these planes have all these components. You need to monitor them and make sure or predict when they're going to die, right? Or whatever.
is this like flying drones around to detect aircraft anomalies, or is this like?
No, it's literally like on F-35, they have like all of these components. They have all these components, and it's like, I don't know, maybe like the fuselage and the wings, there's like some corrosive activity going on. You'll get notified, the maintenance crew will come out and fix it immediately, so it decreases the communication needed to actually fix shit. And it literally costs the taxpayer like billions and billions of dollars every year.
So anyway, I know you have to start soon, but bottom line, I wanna chat.
Yeah, I would love to chat. Yeah, it's good to talk to some people and get an idea of the audience. So, yeah, I'll obviously be around here a bit after if you're sticking around. But I'm gonna try and keep this talk like pretty quick because I think a lot of the value of an event like this is like meeting people. Yeah, I don't want to belabor anyone's time and talk too much. But I'm trying to. The one thing I'm trying to understand is where exactly. So I think I keep classifying this as an anomaly detection, and that's incorrect in my head because there's some words I don't fully understand.
There was like, I suppose there was part of it, right? So it's
So
like
you said
this.
fuselage, like there was like a
Like
what system is detecting exactly? Like where's the
so we didn't do the hardware. Like we were really creating the dashboard. They would basically, we were behind the data wall. So whatever they pick up, whatever they do is part of that. We would just get literally like the CSVs the past 25 years.
Got it.
And then they'd be like, okay, run this through your algorithm.
It's like a regression type thing?
Yeah.
Or you're like a
Yeah.
predicting.
So there was both. So it was like, okay, so at point of contact,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
you have an anomaly, so it's like, okay, this is weird, right? That's where the technician gets applied. And you also have predictions on an entire fleet basis. So you have like, okay, so your entire fleet of C-17s, we expect that 10% of their components are going to get bought in the next like 2 years or something based on history of like weather patterns and usage and stuff like that. So it's a combination.
So you schedule maintenance where you're like, hey, now's probably a good time to do this. Expected.
Yeah, like so basically like the people that were like on the ground fixing the planes, instead of having to like manually check every month or something, they would just get a notification like, hey, this plane component needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like,
Okay, now I understand it. Okay, so yeah, so the amount saved is like the estimated time of like fixing or like it's proactive. It's like
it's proactive. It's literally C3AI.
Yeah.
Literally, that's exactly what we did. It was like a CVM Plus contract. That was a competition. Yeah, exactly. It was a competition for the prime contractor that got the contract.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
The C3AI comparison adds to the I understand.
Exactly.
Cool.
I'll be updated a lot better.
Yeah. And what was your name again?
Brad.
Brad?
And it was Kyle, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna try it. It's gonna suck with
say
me.
it.
Yeah, Brad. I mean, I gotta remember that one. That's not like, that's nothing crazy. Yeah. Dude, dead honest, when I saw you in the audience, I was like, is this like line portal? Like I thought for a second, like the Linux creator, and I was like, but more jacked. But I was like, when I first looked, I was like, fuck no.
That's like we get roasted.
Tony Linus.
Yeah.
I think that's Gabe,
Cool.
yeah.
This is a pretty big screen. Yeah, I mean, this is as big as the screen will be covering everything. Nice. Hey Jacob, is there a live stream?
Yeah.
That's been shared?
Yes, there is a live stream.
Cool.
All right. Everyone can take a seat. Y'all can take a seat. Y'all can take a seat. All right, awesome. Thanks for coming out, everyone. Who's been to Founders Inc. before? How many people? No one? A few people? A couple of people? Nice, awesome. So welcome to Founders Inc. This is our Founder Lab. We occupy this floor in the floor below here. Founders Inc. is kind of three things. It's a founder community. So we have an online community of about 500 founders. And then we have this kind of in-person lab. We also have a portfolio. So we do pre-seed investing. There's about a couple hundred companies in that portfolio. And then we also have a startup studio. Web, we're born and spun up out of our studio and we're incubated here. So all those folks are around you. Anyone that you see working here is typically either in our studio or a portfolio company. There are a number of other community members that are working from here as well. We've thrown a few events. We're kind of starting to ramp up. This space only opened in May of this year. You may have come to Web3SF, which we threw right outside here. Founders Inc. is really focused on emerging tech broadly, right? So like AI, Web3, robotics. We have a robotics lab downstairs. If you stick around, we can kind of show you around. But we're starting to do workshops. So folks like Banana and Kyle here work out of Founders Inc. and want to show you how to use their tech to build awesome AI products. So Kyle's going to be our first AI workshop. So thank you all for attending. There's going to be a little bit of food afterwards, and we're going to just hang out. So feel free to come and chill after the workshop is over.
Let's go!
Cool. Hey everyone. It was nice talking to a couple of you ahead of time. I'm always a little bit nervous at these events, and I've been living in Mexico the last 2 years, so I haven't done like a talk. Kind of helped me relax to realize that everyone here just like wants to talk about cool shit and like what they're building. So I always like the vibes. The title is like launch an AI product in an hour. I'm not going to be opening a coding session for an hour. I'm going to try and keep this like pretty quick. I think I have two goals with this. The first is to, for anyone who hasn't launched a product that is like ML centric, I really want to remove all the barriers to entry. So I want to make it like, I think there's this perception in ML that you need a PhD to do stuff. You have to start reading papers and whatnot. And I'd really like folks to leave this thinking, hey, I could launch today or in an hour. And so timelines get pushed back pretty frequent, but it's a good mindset to have of like, how do we ship now? And with the infrastructure for machine learning, you can definitely do that. The second goal is, so I've been working on this thing called Banana. We were doing ML help for a bunch of companies. We made just a shit ton of mistakes. Like we spent so many months and so many hundreds of thousands of dollars doing stuff wrong that I just feel like it'd be like immoral not to save other devs from making the same mistakes. So I would like to just go through like the top 90% of things that virtually every team that we've worked with scaling from 0 to 1 million ARR has hit, and just prevent you from doing that. It's like a very checklist thing. You don't have to have your laptop open. You're free to. I'm not going to like be picky. You don't have to follow along with anything. Afterwards, I'll provide resources. But yeah, that's the gist. Bit about me. I've been working on machine learning and companies for like more than half my life, which is a lot or a little depending on how you look at it. I did like robotics at Cruise. I was working with like military stuff at Carnegie Mellon. I started business school and then I stopped business school because I felt like the best way to create stuff is to just do it. Yeah, so just been hacking on a bunch of stuff. Broadly, really love making machines smarter. So always down to talk about that. So let's jump into it. I wanted to paint a picture, quite literally, of like how quick this has been advancing. So here's like 2016 using GANs to generate images. If you're a PhD student, you would spend like years of your life trying to generate flowers, right? That was your focus.
And if you wanted to be really novel, you could pivot into like generating birds. Today, right, if you're using stable diffusion models, you can generate effectively anything with a prompt. So like, I don't know, that's pretty incredible, the pace of progress. And it's not just that. I think one of my favorite examples is with driverless cars, where you can look back just a year at the people saying that it's not coming, it's like the dream's dead, and then Cruise just launched like this year. People going for rides, and I think it's just a good testament that like this field is moving incredibly fast. Machine learning is penetrating pretty much every tech stack. So I was at Cruise in 2018, and I saw month over month the degree to which machine learning came into the stack, starting at perception, moving its way down. And you can just kind of see it hitting like a tsunami. The fact that like rigid code is being replaced with like a neural network that is able to better approximate the function that you're working with. So what I want to do in this talk here is I'm going to run through how to launch something in an hour. The bare minimum thing, if you have a problem you want to solve, how you can actually launch it in theory in an hour. I'm going to use an example of an idea I had, right? Like, which is usually how it begins. You kind of have this idea. You're like, I want to do something. It's going to be great. You've like watched a bunch of Steve Jobs documentaries. You're just ready to change the world. But it's like, how do you get the idea out there? So the idea I had was taking classic writing and turning it into picture books, because I think there's like a corpus of knowledge out there. There's amazing, I mean, there's rap lyrics. You could take like lyrics from Nas, just make it into an album. That's dope. You could take like Shakespeare, you could turn it into a picture book. It's great. So I want to step through that process. But first, I also want to pulse check, like, how many people in this audience have gone from like 0 to 1 launching a product and like getting paid by users? Like, I just wanted to see like what's the cool. Okay. All right. And then, okay, so of that subset, how many were doing like ML centric projects? Like ML was at the core of your business. Cool. Cool. What would you mind explaining what you were building? I'm just curious. Yeah. Yeah. What's the like 15-second pitch?
We are building a product for the elderly people. They basically monitors the room, has conditions, unusual behavior, and then sending notifications to the caretaker for the family members.
Got it. So like anomaly detection for caretakers. Cool. Right on. So I'd love to get that number up of people launching ML products, 0 to 1. Here's how you do it. So to bring writing to life, first thing we're going to do is this should take about 5-10 minutes of your hour, is just trying out prompts. You're not reading papers, you're not like inventing stuff, you're just going to public APIs and you're trying things. So frequently I would use like OpenAI. There's also Hugging Face. I'm going to shill Banana because it's my own product. But I think broadly you want to find state-of-the-art machine learning. You want to just see like what's out there, because as new models get published, that's going to enable new use cases. And the timing for ML is really, it's interesting because like something could be impossible a month ago and then suddenly a paper gets published, there's a collab notebook, and now this use case is unblocked. And being really fast at being able to like pick up on those trends, like you don't have weeks or months, you have like hours after it gets launched to get a demo out, get people hyped, launch something. So typically I would head over to OpenAI, like for example with GPT-3 with DaVinci, and I'd be like, okay, I want to summarize the text here. So if I want to make any book into a picture book, I'm going to just pass through all the paragraphs. I'm going to ask GPT-3 to summarize the paragraph into one line, and then I'm just going to pass that line into Stable Diffusion. Bare minimum, super simple. So here's the summary, pass it into Stable Diffusion, bam, shit, looks like garbage. So first question you're asking is like, okay, why does the output suck? You might be thinking, I see all these like sexy demos, everyone's like launching all this cool stuff, and like I'm just throwing stuff into these networks and it's just not working. I guess I gotta fine tune it. I guess I gotta like, I don't know, I gotta like ideate on the network. It's like, no, you don't. You have to do prompt tuning, prompt engineering. So simple change here. A photo showing that, followed by the prompt, right? The problem here was that it's literally writing out the text because of the sentence structure. So just changing the prompt slightly plugging that back in, you can see we start getting like a better style of image. Like we're able to capture it as a scene versus literally text on a page. When you need better prompts, then you can go to Lexica. So I'm shouting this out. Creator is sitting right there. It's a pretty dope project. Basically, you can go and look at, if you haven't seen this, it's been kind of all over Twitter, you can get exposure to all the different prompts and the outputs of those. So for example, I went through, and this is all during like my hour kind of screenshotting as I go. I saw that there's these like common keywords that are used, like digital painting, ArtStation, concept art. So it's like, okay, let's chuck that into our prompt. So we're gonna add a little bit more. Let's just say it's clear and high quality. It actually does it. So this seems almost like stupid, but the point I'm trying to get at is like launching fast is about doing the really obvious stuff. And in machine learning, there's almost this like pathological need to start doing academia when you could just be like doing really obvious shit to get something out the door. So I'm trying to, I think that's the controversial theme of this whole talk. Here's when you add the final trailing cinematic lighting digital art. When I saw this one, I was like, this kind of slaps. So I was like, let's use this. Let's move forward with it. Great. So the other 40 minutes of my time, so I did a bit of prompt engineering. We get something that works. Let's just build a front end. How do you do that? Okay, I went to this site called Shuffle. I always looked up Tailwind CSS components, right? Give an idea of how quick it is. I generated something with no code, right? I exported it. I copied the code. I put it into a return statement with CSS, right? So here's kind of the flow I want. Generate a photo on the right. There's an input form. Let's just output the CSS, the Next.js component. Great, let's add some hooks. So when you click the button, adds to the form, really simple stuff, right? No deep innovation yet. We're just trying to get something on a home page. And then what I've done here is I called Banana to do the stable diffusion. And I also, in this backend, I do an OpenAI call to DaVinci, right? So, and then basically have this pipeline of pass in a prompt with the slight prompt engineering I did, like prompt engineering 101. Get the output, pass it into Banana, and then render the image. There's no database, there's no nothing, there's no backend. And so I think the point I'm really trying to drive home is that while working on Banana, I've seen a lot of really incredible AI companies scale to hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars with like very simple front-end logic, like using no code tools and like just getting the UX down, trying to figure out like what the actual pain point of the user is. I think that's like just a big driving thing to get, is that you don't have to be writing a paper right now. You don't have to be publishing a white paper. You don't have to be doing something crazy. You just need to ship an actual UX that makes someone's life better. That's it. So to deploy it, I use Zeet. It's a pretty dope product. I've been a fan of it for a while. The founder's also an F-Inc. It's not just coincidental. I think there's probably a correlation between me using F-Inc products and being in F-Inc. But yeah, so I launched with that. You can go to the endpoint. It's in prod, because that would be kind of a silly talk if we didn't ship something. I've got a URL up there. I'll link to it at the end. But basically, you can start calling this. I put like a really sexy tagline. Pictures worth 1,000 words. You can start inputting your text. You can generate scenes. That's it. Very simple. Okay, so let's assume you've spent like an hour. You've launched, right? Okay, you've got something out the door. There's broadly across close to like 100 companies I've seen. There's usually like the 4 categories that are going to get you next. It's like kind of the 4 horsemen of like ML, which is the quality of your output, reliability, speed, price. So here's just kind of the simplest understanding of like how to win at each of those without falling into a 1-year trap. And it's interesting because I'm gonna say it here, but then a lot of people that will build will still go down the same path. Like they're still gonna say, not me, I'm just gonna quickly fine tune this thing. I'm just gonna clean my data, it'll be like easy. And then they're gonna go down like a 3-month rabbit hole of trying to clean their data when they don't realize that they're actually not like solving a problem. So for increasing model quality, as you saw, like prompt engineering, prompt engineering and narrowing your niche. So for example, if you're trying to generate stories,
Instead of trying to make it this perfect solution that generates stories for everything, you could hone in on a niche. You could say, like, I want to generate album artwork for rap, like rap lyrics. And then you could start doing prompt engineering. You could start like honing in on how to work better on just a really particular type of user. That's probably, like, that takes minutes to do. It can save you a lot of time. Once you've exhausted that, you can start moving into like the data cleaning, because data quality is like one of the main indicators of model quality, and fine tuning and all that. I really just, yeah, like a common thing I'll hear people say is like, well, we come from Oxford, we've got this, like, I've got my PhD in whatever, and we're gonna like innovate on this architecture because GANs are a big thing. And I'm just like, wait, why are you doing that? Like, you don't have to reinvent an architecture. Just stick with what you have, like what's out there. Use collab notebooks, like get something out the door. For reliability, same thing. It's like scaling up number of users. Try to use platform as a service that's available out of box, like really simple. I know people kind of shit on cloud, like AWS and GCP. You can still do a lot with them as opposed to writing stuff from scratch. So basically, I would say just like use stuff out of box. Once you've got like a scale where you actually need to, so say you're running an inference pipeline, you're handling a bunch of traffic, you're scaling to the point where you just can't handle like a simple out-of-box thing and you want to start setting up dedicated GPU clusters. This is where Pulumi will probably be like one of your favorite tools. It'll allow you to like orchestrate basically all of your infrastructure defined in code, defined in Python. So yeah, and then basically like I would like highly advise not going down the route of just writing traditional load balancing, auto scaling stuff that's been written a bajillion of times, especially if it's going to like vendor lock you. Third is speed. For speed, it's like, again, it's like almost trivial, but it's like, I think running on better compute, batch processing to run multiple jobs at once are like the quickest bang for your buck. I think a lot of teams I've talked to will go down the kind of the rabbit hole of like, okay, we're going to optimize kernels. We're gonna put this on jacks. Like, we're gonna make this run on TPUs. We're gonna, like, because TPUs are faster, and they'll start doing a rewrite themselves. You could expect that to take weeks to months, probably months if you're new to it, weeks if you're pretty skilled. So it's just not the first thing I would advise to. I basically stick at like this rough order of frequency if you're trying to make things faster. And then lastly, like price. There's two broad categories for pricing. So obviously serverless GPUs, which is like the whole, the area I'm in, trying to like boot machines quickly. So you have like basically AWS Lambda for GPUs. The second that's really interesting is, which a lot of people don't realize, is when you're running a machine learning payload, often the GPU is being underutilized. So you could run your model multiple times on the same machine. The problem is GPUs don't naturally have good memory virtualization. So this means that, like, you say you've got a text-to-speech service, you're running it. If you try to stack it up multiple times on the same GPU, you'll start getting like CUDA errors thrown out the ass. You could start exploring how to do hardware-level virtualization on things like A100s, which, again, you're kind of going down like a bit deeper here. But there's also platforms you can use. But the core thing here is like pack more things onto one machine. That's a good bang for your buck. If you're familiar with Kubernetes, you can do things like multi-pod scheduling. So you can have multiple Kubernetes pods put on the same hardware device. This is already a concept that's like really well known in like on a CPU, but it's just recently being unlocked on GPU. So I think there's this is kind of like a deeper intuition more from my work on Banana, which is like there's actually a lot you can do here in the last year or two with like unlocking way cheaper ML. And so if you've ever had something where you're like the quality's there but it's too expensive, I think price is a pretty appealing category of like differentiating on a product.
It's just saying we do text to speech, but it's 10 times cheaper than before. We do image generation, it's 10 times cheaper. Yeah. So last category are just going to be kind of a list of the things that have almost killed my own company, and a list of things where I'll go to like a meetup, I'll talk to other founders, and they're like, oh yeah, like I had the exact same thing happen. And so would really just love to at least help one developer in this room not hit the same list of things, but it'll still happen. But if you can avoid it, that'd be great. So basically, the number one is going to be cloud infra. Costs a lot more when you're running GPU payloads. It's so easy to lose track. I can give a story. I can give a story of Banana almost dying overnight because we didn't realize that on AWS there's this extra expense for IOPS, like input-output operations. And there's networking costs when you're pulling Docker images, like large payloads. And so I built a lot on AWS. I didn't see these problems when you're doing like web services. But suddenly we're pulling like 20 gigabyte files and we're moving them around and we're caching and we're trying to boot stuff fast. So we're using these like new primitives. We wake up to a $70,000 bill in a couple of days and no refund. Literally almost die. Company almost dies. So like there's nothing that's like made me lose more sleep than just not setting card limits. Like I can't say that enough. It happens to so many people. Another example is we set up Lambda functions that accidentally called themselves. And so when a Lambda function calls itself, you know what happens is it's going to scale to the moon, right? $5,000 bill after 2 hours. Third example, I got a huge list of basically of ways to drill the point home, which is logging. We had a single for loop that was printing the status of a worker on our system, and there was no timeout function, so we just printed as fast as possible. $5,000 a day bill, caught it after 2 days. No refunds on these things. So that's $100,000 down the drain of our company just by not setting throttling limits. And so like if there's one thing that like I know when if you're starting off as an early product, it's always like I'll get there later once we're at scale. This should be like a day one thing. Like just spend a day, like if you've launched an MVP, just like set limits across your stack. Make sure that can't happen. Yeah, so I've got like I just like literally looked up random tweets and I just saw the wall to like feel a bit better of seeing other people that have gone down this exact same path. Yeah, so vendor locking kind of falls in this category. If you're writing vendor specific code to interface with like GPU clouds, it's gonna suck because you're gonna end up wanting to migrate for some appealing deal on another cloud. It's gonna cost you like more than a month migrating your stack multiple times. So this is where like Pulumi would come in really handy, using cloud agnostic infrastructure until you absolutely can't. Like you should be able to scale close to 1 million ARR. Like I haven't seen a team that hit 1 million ARR that needed to like go deep into like auto scaling logic or something. Like there's a lot of like available stuff on clouds. There's newer competitors to AWS GCP, so like CoreWeave, Lambda, not AWS Lambda, like Lambda Labs. So you could start doing really interesting things with like cheaper GPU clouds, run Pulumi on them. You can move in a day instead of a month. So that's a big one. And I think like the mistake that we personally made was saying, hey, Google Cloud has this nice API for like scaling up something in a node pool, or maybe that's AWS or whatever. The problem is once you want to move to the other one, you're going to have a whole different set of terms that you need to understand. And so these like vendors are built in a way that are trying to keep you from migrating to other ones. So it's just going to cause you to rip your hair out. Like all your design docs won't matter because on AWS it's called instance, or it's called like warm pools on EC2 with like all these like very niche terms. And on Google Cloud it's instance templates on and it just sucks. Like it's the same concept, all different words. The third that I've found just kind of anecdotally is like the automated testing and logging. I found if you've just launched and it's not absolutely blocking you,
it's better just to like talk directly with users, and like when they find a bug, just go fix the one-off thing. Like you don't have to write a full testing, like a full test suite that covers everything unless you're working on like a really critical use case. I think there was a lot of times where I think this kind of applies like generally to like early development. But for some reason it just comes in faster with like machine learning because there's just all these new like sexy tools that just make it sound like, oh, I need visibility on my machine learning models. Like I need to set up end-to-end inference tracking and tracing, and I need to look at like, I need to have a full profiling of how the model's performing on a GPU. And it's like, it's all great, but like I would really just advise not to set that stuff up until it's like until it's the number one priority. Again, like at Banana, we've probably spent like several weeks collectively over the last year or so just kind of doing stuff where it's like it was important, but it wasn't like the number one blocker to users. So really keeping that in mind, I think will save you just a lot of time. I think if you follow just like these points, even without understanding them, you'd be able to go from like months to weeks at least. So yeah, I think I don't want to drag it on too long. Really want to open for questions. I'm not the most versed on everything here, but I'm sure this audience has people that delve way deeper, but I could try to answer stuff, and then we could open floor just to kind of meet each other. Hey, what's up?
That price increase to $70,000, what would like your immediate next sequence, like how can you say?
Yeah, so what happened, we got hit with a $70,000 bill. You're gonna think that these cloud providers are gonna save you, right? Because you might be used to it, like, oh, it's obviously such a big mistake, it matters so much to me. We ended up in 2 months of email threads with them where it turned into basically trying to upsell us to signing a long reserved instance contract in order to like justify a strategic partnership. It just ended up wasting more of our time. It was so emotionally draining that we had to just sever the relationship and just eat the cost. We immediately caught it, just honestly by a flunk. If we hadn't had caught this bug, our company wouldn't exist right now, like guaranteed. We caught it by accident because one of us was going through the billing monitor on AWS and just like, I'll just check it out, and then just saw that like it's 4 days into the month, we had just shipped this new this new feature, which required a very niche thing in AWS to load Docker images quickly, and it just happened to cost a lot. We didn't even know where it was coming from. So root causing it was like uncertain. Yeah, incredibly stressful. I don't know if it speaks to others. Like I imagine at least someone else in this audience has hit a similar pain point, but I think the misassessment is thinking that they'll just give you a refund. Like they won't. They don't. Like you have to think of the economics of it. Like they're dealing with like multi-million-dollar customers. If they know that you're barely like afloat, like you have this limited runway, like they just don't have like an incentive to really help, and they can't bet on everyone. They've got their own interests. So moving forward, we set card limits, right? If you're using Brex, you can do that. If you're using Ramp, whatever the tools, we just set hard card limits. And then within AWS console, within any console you're using, just like aggressive alerting. So now we have a Slack channel where whenever a cost exceeds like hundreds of dollars a day, we just like start spamming us. I think, yeah, it's like an annoying thing because it doesn't sound needed, and it's so easy to not do until it hurts you. So it's kind of a vicious thing. Like you don't really perceive the cost until it hits your bank, and then you're like, I will never make this mistake. And we knew that this was a thing because we've heard other teams. I've gone to talks and people are like, set cloud limits, be careful. And we're like, yeah, but I'll get to it. And it's always like number 2. And then like you wake up and you have to go to stand up and you're like, we're almost dead because of this. Like this would have killed us in next week. So yeah, it sucks. Just like you got to be proactive about it. Yeah. What's up?
Cool. My question is, you mentioned something about data cleaning, and
Yeah.
how would that apply? Like the stuff that you showed was more around like, I don't know, using off-the-shelf, OpenAI off-the-shelf SQL diffusion, but how could you even, I don't know, it seems like those models are pre-trained. So what could you apply that here or without?
So it's going to depend on the use case. I think text, like transformer models, I'm not as familiar with text to speech a lot more. So you're basically processing text into like phonemes
and then you're processing those to generate speech. You've basically got to generate either a human in the loop or some other pipeline in which you're detecting problems in the, like you're fine tuning the model, you're creating this big data set, you're finding problems in the data, you're going through and you're retraining it. It's not trivial. For image, again, I'm not super versed in this. Actually, somebody from Cruise, his name's Peter Gao, if anyone's familiar with him, he's running a thing called Aquarium Learn. They're trying to delve deeper into the image problem of like, how do you find which images are contributing to improper classification? So if you're doing classification, like supervised computer vision, there's a lot more that you can do. If you're doing text-to-speech, a little less. And transformers, I honestly, like I can't really think of like the best ideas. Like a lot of these transformers are trained on data sets like the pile, like just terabytes of text data. And so I would be curious, does anyone in this audience, are they really familiar with transformers? Because is there anyone here who's just like, I see someone at the back. Yeah, so anyone who's got a deeper understanding of transformers, I think, would be like for data cleaning there. I'd be curious. I really just, I'm not informed enough to like, I've tried to solve that problem for months and it just kind of turned into this like, well, it looks bad. Like we throw stuff into like Grammarly or like some sort of API that in the end you're doing the same thing. Like you have humans checking it. Another like really pragmatic solution is have users rate the outputs of the model on the front end, feed that back in, and then just like manually set up a retraining pipeline every like week, every couple weeks. But unless you're at a significant scale, it won't, like that's why I put it as like kind of the yellow light category. Like you won't get to it until you've got a decent scale. So maybe if you're at an existing company, it's a good idea.
Yeah, you would need, I mean, it seems like you would need training set up if you wanted to do.
Yeah, like it's.
Because you don't, the stuff you described, you don't actually need to even train them all.
Yeah.
You're just like
Yeah.
some pre-trained stuff.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, and the whole angle I'm coming on this talk is I've seen a number of people and examples of projects that go from 0 to 1 million without needing to do all these extra things. And I'm convinced that like, and I've seen dozens of other companies, including myself, go down the rabbit hole of like, I just need to fine tune it one more time. I just need to like, the data is just a little too dirty. Like I just got to clean it. And it's like that, I think there's like huge things you can do there. It's just going to take you months. So I'm setting the expectation that if you're a startup founder and you're like, I'm going to launch a thing and we're going to do our Series A next spring, I'd be like, whoa, like if you're talking about like retraining pipelines and like you're going to put this like, you're going to start this like labeling engine that's going to have human in the loop. I'm like, no, you're not going to be at 1 million ARR the next spring. I'm saying that as like somebody who tried to go down that path. It's just like this constant carrot hanging in front of you of like, you're almost there and you're not. So the stuff I gave are like things you can do in days, iterate. If you hit a product that really works, I think actually like, I think Lexica is a good example of something that like really just popped off on Twitter. Like you can get hundreds, thousands, even millions of users in a matter of days or weeks. If you like so I guess the TLDR of this talk is traditional machine learning 10 years ago is I need to take Andrew Ng's machine learning course, then I need to read some papers, and then I need to understand all these different things and then start building for several months to innovate. I think a more pragmatic approach that I would recommend if your goal is to scale a product that leverages ML is to just have exposure to all the latest stuff coming out, like have it in your feed in the morning and get in the habit of shipping prototypes in a day, in an hour. Because when one of those takes off, it'll compensate for the months of like working on a single data pipeline for some, like there's basically a graveyard of hundreds of companies that are all doing the same thing. Like they're in the kind of like the multi-month cycle trying to do it. And again, when you're at scale, it makes sense. Like if you're, like any large company, I'm not going to generalize to that because I'm not fully sure how the rules would apply. But as a small scale, if you're a team of like sub 10, I haven't seen an example yet, unless someone can think of a counter where it's like a good idea to go down that multi-month. I think there could be exceptions, but broadly speaking, across dozens of companies I've seen, it seems to be better just to like ship something really fast with pre-made stuff, kind of that checklist of rules, and then avoid the multi-week experiments until it's like you have product market fit with something, or you're like, I'm sure that if this is better, like we already have data showing that this will increase our retention curve or something, versus like just speculating that I must train it better and like chasing the same thing down infinitely. Anyway, yeah. Hey, what's up?
So you mentioned batching predictions for speed, and so like 2 questions on that. One, that feels like that introduces a lot of complexity relative to just like one request comes in, one response comes out. And then 2, like batching, I normally think is something that increases my utilization of my accelerators. And if I'm using like serverless or fractional GPUs like you suggested, it seems like I would want to do that in order to get away with like one request, one response with no like no batching in between, no like Redis queue, no nonsense.
Yeah, so I've seen in a couple cases. So the first is if you're processing, say in the paragraph the book summarization, just splitting things up into paragraphs, throwing in multiple at once, versus like treating a whole book as a single line of just like one paragraph at a time. I think that, and the utilization comes into speed when you're looking at like a larger job that has to be handled. In that regard, it doesn't, I think it could conflict with price perhaps, but more generally, what will happen, again, I'll use like very concrete examples instead of speculating. We'll see somebody come to us, they're doing text to speech. And we're like, okay, you're using like 4 gigabytes of RAM on the machine. You could just huck way more on this GPU and you'll be getting the job done faster without needing extra hardware. So, yeah. Any other questions? Hey, what's up?
What's your story of why you founded Banana and like came up with the name?
Yeah, so yeah, Banana has 2 names. The first is we're the next Apple, so it's just like it's a good name. The second is, are you familiar with the using banana for scale meme on Reddit? It's basically in Reddit, if you use, I don't know, we shitpost a lot as a company, so like just as a team. So we were on Reddit a lot, and we're like, everyone compares objects to bananas. We're like, so we're like, people will use banana for scale. That's where the name came from. Where the company came from was actually, we had a previous pivot where common problem in ML is like you become a dev consultancy, which happened to us. We were just like working with a bunch of companies. We broadly were trying to solve problems that related to like transformers and model quality. Weren't able to scale that reliably because we're competing with like companies that are just publishing better research output faster, like OpenAI, great example. But so through that, we kind of got our ass handed to us. Like, this isn't going to be a $1 billion company. But what we did see were like more than 100 companies that we had been talking to. And so we just like had a list of like, okay, what's the biggest bullshit that all these companies were dealing with? And it was like the category of like, okay, cloud bills, I guess like inference speed, model quality. So we had those kind of pillars. And we were like, okay, well, we've tried, like it was just very much just like asking ourselves, like, where do we want to go next? We were kind of jaded on model quality, but I think there's there's obviously opportunities there. If you can just have better ML, then that's great. But yeah, we kind of looked in, we were like, price is a thing that really haunted us because we were spending we were getting upwards of like 100K a month burn. We're like, this sucks. Like, I would love that number to be 10K, not 100K. How do we do that? And we realized that like the majority of our, since we were doing consultancy, right? We were working with a bunch of teams. We realized that like we just had tons of GPUs that were like left running, handling payloads. And it's just like, it just slowly built up and we're like, I don't have time to like deal with this crap, but like, we'll get to it. And we ended up never dealing to it. It burned like a good chunk of our runway. And so we're like, let's solve that problem. Like, let's just make sure future teams don't have that. Yeah. Okay, that's all. I would love, yeah.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
You said you've seen a bunch of teams go from like whatever 0 to 1 million or whatever users or revenue, without doing like fancy modeling stuff. And I'm curious, other than Lexica, if you can share examples of like what kinds of things people are doing, what kinds of products are people, useful things are people doing, like with simple things like models.
I don't want to out anyone, just out of like obviously like IP respect. SEO generation, like content generation for ads, for SEO, for blog content, anything there. A lot of companies really able to scale fast in that vertical. Again, like I'm not working on the company, but it's just through working with people, you're like, all right, this is popping off. And then you realize that there's a lot of work on like prompt engineering, the actual UX, like understanding. I can try a concrete example without giving any info that like reveals any companies, because but basically companies that understood who their user was, like for example, they're working with this like niche subset of like let's say artists, right? Or they're working with artists, they're working with people who are writing lyrics for like music, and they're like, these people want inspiration to generate lyrics, right? And so they really honed in and they're like, hey, I was a musician, like they've got that specialty on their team. They just understand what the customer wants, like better. They know the little heuristics that are kind of in their head. And they were just like, I think that what I suspect is like that was enough to push them over to hit that UX where like they're able to go further than like just a pure ML team, which is like, yes, this problem requires data and I will like train more models. Like, so TLDR is like, you'll see a space where there's a bunch of people training neural nets, and then you'll see like a small group of like maybe a couple teams where they just really understand the psychology of the user. They know this like, hey, this is like parents on Facebook that want to educate their kids better. Like it's like a really specific thing. And then you're like, okay, well, what does a transformer generating educational content look like in this niche context? And then when everyone else is competing here, they have like a step function increase that like just passes into that realm of like feasibility, and then they explode. That's the pattern I've seen. Not from like a statistically significant number, but it's more of just like, you're like, well, this is clearly a playbook that is becoming more and more solidified. Anyway, I would love to just open the floor, let others chat. I think a lot of the value from an event like this is like us chatting amongst ourselves. Would love to get to know folks in the audience. And hopefully this adds some clarity. I can publish slides wherever. If there's anything else I can answer, I hope that is helpful. Again, part of me almost feels bad that I'm not like opening papers and looking all smart with like fancy ML jargon, but like I'm trying to use all the stuff I've learned by actually being in the field and being like, yeah, it really is almost stupidly obvious when it's written out, which makes it all the more painful when you fall for the same mistakes. So, yeah.
How did you figure out psychology of interesting was important to make those companies move as much? How did you figure it out?
Better, like $900.
Well, the company that obviously figured out.
So,
It wasn't about so it's like they're in the audience. We're doing it by being like we're
I
you know, the thing is, okay,